or I might say something like, what are the challenges associated with sort of subsurface remote sensing? Okay, so I can't ask you for any technical details, but the first reply could be, well, there are very few phenomena, electromagnetic or acoustic, that effectively sense below the surface. But I'd have to word that question a bit carefully so it doesn't feel open-ended. In terms of inverse problems, I would probably be sticking to basic concepts of posedness, existence, uniqueness. And you've all studied like basic linear systems. You understand, or you should understand, what an overdetermined and undetermined system, what that means. And so I'm not really looking for much more than, can you now generalize a sense of overdetermined and underdetermined to these more abstract problems? So it's not just a set of equations on the board, please solve them to get the answer. But I obviously can't ask you anything more than that linear one for which I wrote down the answer. I will not ask you to do any calculation on a regularized problem, because we just plain simple haven't covered that kind of material. That's where I had like a lambda L, L transpose L, so it was like C transpose C plus lambda L transpose L, all inverse C transpose M kind of thing. But I think I could ask you, what role do constraints play on the unknowns in allowing a solution to be found from an inverse problem? Okay. And so then the answer would be, there exist many problems which are underdetermined. Somehow you'd have to work that in. Okay? And in underdetermined problems, there are too few measurements. Therefore, I require constraints on the unknowns. These, the assertion of such constraints is what is meant by regularization, and that allows us to find an answer, something along those lines. Okay? All right. So, I've got like, went over my a few minutes to try to summarize what I want to talk about.
This is the second of one of my back-to-back days.
Okay, so quickly. All right, so nope. Oh, that's good. All right. So this is not what I want to show you. So I have now a long-standing history with these kinds of topics, and I want to leave myself a few more minutes, so I'll try to be quick. So I've written a bunch of articles. The sort of motivation behind this course is something which is quite dear and personal to me by now. And so I was just hoping to sort of motivate for you, at least with how I see the tremendous significance of this course, far beyond a collection of material and a sort of a bunch of stuff that I can sort of state questions on in the exam. And I hope to some extent you feel some of that coming through. And I know from reading your sort of little descriptions at the beginning of the course, for a lot of you, there are in fact significant interests beyond finding another technical elective to satisfy some kind of TE requirement. For example, in terms of these kinds of issues, I've written long lists of articles on the topic. I have maybe 5, 6, 7 years by now of trying to sort of promote themes and ideas along these lines, and so it's become not quite a mission, but it's become sort of a big sort of personal sort of endeavor on my part. The one thing that's why I take sort of this course seriously and the kind of multidisciplinary look at it is that 5 years ago when I wrote this, sort of understanding energy issues, I was pretty convinced that you needed to have a pretty broad multidisciplinary understanding of the world, otherwise you were stuck with half-truths or sort of easily manipulated by sort of focused specialists in one topic or another. Obviously you can't be an expert at all these things, but for me it became kind of a really compelling urge to understand the world more broadly than from, I've never really been a narrow perspective kind of guy, but I started reading a lot more and had a much greater appreciation of history, in particular finance and things like that, that I hadn't thought about so much in the past. So, having done that for a while, I have a personal sort of level of commitment to the seriousness of these topics, and so I'm really not promoting this in any way. I'm just sort of giving this as an example of the kind of stuff that I've tried to do. This was sort of a little sort of labor of love, but just kind of a brainstorming of how to sort of live differently. And so this is a commitment way beyond wanting to teach a different kind of course. I'm trying to live my life very much differently, probably not necessarily than how it's been in the past. Me, I'm just trying to justify my kind of weird lifestyle as opposed to change it. But anyways, I try to take these things very seriously, if nothing else. So my most recent sort of time diversion has been to look at what's known as permaculture. And so I've got a spreadsheet with approximately 280 different perennials, most of which are native, all of which are grown in southern Ontario, all of which are medicinal or herbal. I've organized them by type in what's known as a perennial polyculture, meaning that you have mixes of plants such that any one insect that comes in has to basically move to find the next plant of the same type, and therefore greatly increases the probability that it gets eaten by a beneficial insect. 99% of insect species are in fact beneficial to us. It's only when you have a huge monoculture that remaining 1% comes in and dominates like mad. Whether this is actually true or just a good theory remains to be seen. I'm experimenting with it. So anyway, so these are the kind of things I spend my time on. And so, there's a variety of groupings here, and more, a bunch of fruit trees, superfoods and super medicinal herbs and plants, all of which are established. Historical medicinal, like if I go to one of these kind of, there's a variety of, Black Creek Pioneer Village is not the best example, Dune's not the best, but like older ones, where they have like a little medicinal garden. That's where I like haul up my scrap paper and start taking notes, because the kinds of things people grew 300 years ago interest me much, much more, because they had to be self-reliant, and they weren't growing things because they're pretty or fun, they were growing it for a good reason. And I figured their good reasons are my good reasons. And so ultimately, I have now sort of embarked on a big project, so a foolhardy one. So I have 130 acres on which I am experimenting on a very modest fraction. Most of it is, you can't till by hand and with a scythe 130 acres. Although I am the only one using a scythe anywhere in the area. So this is what I do now when I'm not teaching you. So I have a nut orchard, I've got a fruit tree orchard, I've got approximately 100 different types of perennials, building a house, repairing a barn. And so maybe it's foolhardy, but ultimately this is what motivates this course for me. So I'm not trying to get you to buy into this vision, but I'm hoping that the course has had a chance to sort of at least challenge you or broaden your mindset a little bit, or give you stuff to think about, if nothing else. Or ideally, if you're sort of philosophically like-minded to where I'm coming from, but didn't have sort of a sense of the technical background and the technical issues behind it, that you now have an appreciation of what those are. Even if I went a little bit too quickly, that you weren't able to absorb it all as much as you would have liked, or as much as you would have hoped in order to write an exam. I'm hoping that having seen that scope of material, and of course it's entirely inadequate when you see on my other list, right? We didn't talk about ancient history or sociology or political science at all, I suppose. But even though it's inadequate, I'm hoping that that range of topics is giving you a bit of a better sense of some of the issues at play in all of this. So that wraps up. I went a few minutes over, but anyway, so that wraps up. It was a fun term. I hope you gave me some kind of feedback and evaluations. One or two of you have emailed me separately if you have stuff to comment on. I would love to hear about it, because I'm motivated to improve the course. Otherwise, best wishes to next couple of weeks writing exams. A significant fraction of you are graduating now, probably about 2/3, I think, as I recall. So again, my best wishes then to you as you sort of go and do other things. All right, so take care.